This is iFi's new inexpensive Zen DAC. It's a DAC, headphone amp, and preamp. So for only about $130, what do you get, and is it any good? That's what I aim to find out. To start with, the Zen DAC is USB bus powered, so all you have to do is plug it directly into a computer, and as long as that computer can supply the power, the Zen DAC will operate. In situations where you have something that cannot supply the power, such as you want to connect with a phone, you can also connect the Zen DAC to a 5-volt power supply of your choice, and as long as it supplies enough current, which actually isn't very much at all, then you can use it with other USB sources as well. Now, the interesting thing about the Zen DAC is that they advertise it as having both balanced output and single-ended output, something that's kind of unique for only $130. Also on the back, they have a 4.4mm output, just like the headphone one on the front, and two RCA jacks for plugging into another device to use this just as a DAC. One of the useful features they've added is the ability to switch the output between fixed output if you just want to use it as a DAC, and variable output if you want to use it as a volume control, as a DAC amp, to say something like active speakers. So this could be a good setup if you have a nice pair of active speakers. The only downside to this, of course, is the output being 4.4mm is that there aren't any regularly available 4.4mm to XLR connectors if you, say, wanted to use it with a pair of active speakers that have balanced inputs. So if you do want to do that, that ends up being a little bit more of an expense, as you have to ask some cable manufacturer to make one for you, unless you can find one online. Now, the other thing about the front, of course, is that it has your regular 6.3mm output here, and of course a 4.4mm Pentacon output. Now, in that, I'm really happy that iFi has gone with the Pentacon connector. I think this should be the standard for headphones in the future going forward. And I think most devices, where possible, should have a Pentacon connector and either a 6.3 or preferably a 3.5mm connector, so that people who want to use it with more, say, common headphones can readily do so. Although the 6.3mm jack can be readily adapted to 3.5mm via readily available adapters. The only downside to that is this being a bargain component for only $130. If you say to someone, hey, look, you can get this for only $130, how cheap is that? And then you have to tell them, but to use it at its most optimum with a balanced output, then you have to buy an aftermarket cable for your headphones. Now, a lot of us enthusiasts already have a lot of gear with a 4.4mm connector, but the real enthusiasts will probably be not usually spending money on devices at this kind of price point, probably usually spending a fair bit more, as the IEMs that come with 4.4mm connectors are usually quite a bit more expensive than most of the ones that people use. So in that, I think it's not necessarily a great selling point that it's been optimized around the 4.4mm output, as it makes kind of less of a bargain than they say it is. However, one of the other features they have is their true bass button, and this adds a bit of bass and warmth to the sound, which I found really good with a lot of headphones, just to kind of fill out the sound nicely. They also have something called Power Match here, which is basically a gain control, so you can switch it between a mode that's more suitable for IEMs and a mode that's more suitable for full-sized headphones. So key to that is the performance itself. And for something this inexpensive, it actually sounds pretty good. Even using just the single-ended output and USB direct from my computer, which is an Apple computer, if anyone's wondering, that the sound quality I was quite impressed by. One of the things I really liked about the Zen DAC especially was that a problem I have with inexpensive DACs is they usually use an AKM chip, and they're usually kind of a little bit like digital sounding. There's something like, they sound okay, but for me they're kind of, compared to, say, multi-bit DACs, they tend to sound maybe just a little bit unnatural. But with the Burr Brown chip in the Zen DAC, I found that it was somewhat more natural sounding and didn't have that kind of digital glare that some cheap DACs have, or even just some moderate priced DACs. And that's what made it most pleasant to listen with. I used a variety of headphones with it, such as the Sennheiser Drop HD6XX, also the AKG K7XX, and other more demanding headphones such as Hi-Fi Man's Sundaras. And in all cases, the performance, even out of the single-ended output, as long as I didn't try and blast my ears out at high volumes, which, as always, I do not recommend as it will cause hearing damage, at moderate levels it was very pleasant to listen with. Now, the thing is, you're probably wondering, how about the balanced output? Well, the balanced output was also very good as well, but what I decided to do, interestingly, was compare it to the output using the RCA outputs I connected to the new shit Magni 3. And compared to the balanced output, the single-ended output of the Magni 3, volume match just for accuracy, did sound better than the balanced output of the Zen DAC. And so in that, the balanced output didn't necessarily provide a benefit over anything except the single-ended output of the Zen DAC itself. Still, there is an upgrade going to the $99 Magni 3 Plus or the Magni Heresy. For example, with the drop Sennheiser HD6XX headphones, the performance out of the Zen DAC, whether single-ended or balanced, was basically decent. However, it did tend to make them sound a little bit more kind of mid-forward than I usually hear out of other amps that I've used before. And considering I consider them fairly mid-forward headphones to begin with, that wasn't totally the most ideal. I seem to get better bass extension out of the Magni 3 Plus, although with the Zen DAC you can compensate for this somewhat by using the Truebass function. So performance-wise, there was a noticeable jump up going from this to something like the Magni 3. And a different pair of headphones in that way is the Campfire Audio's Cascades. Now these are already, of course, very V-shaped headphones, so they already have very strong bass. So in going from something like the Zen DAC to the Magni 3 Plus, the difference wasn't quite so noticeable as the bass is already very strong on these. But the performance out of the Zen DAC was again quite decent and very enjoyable, and they are headphones that are designed to be easily driven, especially even out of portable devices. And given that the Zen DAC is USB bus powered, it's kind of semi-equivalent to a portable device in power output. So really, its real competitor in terms of things like brands like Shit Audio is with maybe their inexpensive Hell or their inexpensive Fuller. Those are the ones that I really might like to compare it with in the future. As someone who maybe already has a 4.4mm connector may prefer this. But as things go, I think where it really worked out well is a nice little simple DAC that you could plant on your desk and use as just something to listen to music casually, as the sound quality was really nice with whatever I plugged into it. Now, as things go, people may be wondering, well, you do have USB powered input, and that's not always the best. And also, you do have a 5-volt input. Now, does that make any improvement if you, say, use a high quality power supply or maybe a better USB source? Well, the good and the bad in both respects is that using a better USB source or using a better power supply, as I have a spare linear power supply that can supply 5 volts, I didn't really notice any particular improvement, so it's not something I would spend money on with these. I think the sound quality was pretty excellent just straight USB out of my Mac Mini. Though, of course, your mileage may vary, of course, with Windows machines, as I don't have any experience with those. Mainly, as I said, this little Zen DAC is a real bargain at $130 odd. At least in the US, the sound quality was good. If you're looking for something that, say, can plug into some active speakers or use something to just listen to music casually at your desk, I think it's a really neat design, especially with this stylish but at least flat on top design. So if there are other components that are available, you can stack them. And as far as other components go, they also have a Bluetooth version. So in the end, I'm very impressed with what iFi has produced with the Zen DAC. And I definitely recommend it, even though it is most ideally used with the balanced output. Out of the single-ended output, it was a really nice, simple DAC amp, which is just very pleasant to use. So I hope you enjoyed my quick review of iFi's Zen DAC, and give it a thumbs up if you did. If you'd like to see more and be notified when I have more reviews out, do subscribe. Also, don't forget that these videos are made thanks to everyone who has supported me over the years. It's because of them it's possible for me to make these videos. If you'd like my buying advice, you like help, and you're worried about how much spending money on stuff and you're not sure, become a supporter and you can get my buying advice anytime. And it's probably going to save you way more than something like the $2 a month that I'm asking. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you online.